Hello, I'm Marit Stiles, a leader of Ontario's NDP, and I'm so excited to be here with everybody in beautiful Belleville. I am proud to be joined here today by our candidate in the upcoming Bay of Quinte by-election, Amanda Robertson, and I'm also holding my holding the umbrella, which I'll be doing for you in a minute. It is starting to rain here in Belleville, but that's fall weather for you. She is an incredible local advocate and trustee, and your future NDP MPP here in Bay of Quinte. I'm also very happy to be joined by Andrew Wachner, the OSSTF president here, Liz James, QP 1479 president, Joanne White, past QP a past local president here for QP, Heidi Moncrief, a teacher actually at the school that we're standing in front of, and many others who have joined us today who are education workers or retired education workers. And listen, it's back to school season, right? We're only in the second week of back to school here in the province of Ontario. And for families all across this province, that's meant excitement, a little bit of nervousness for sure, but a lot of excitement. But I wish it was all good news. Unfortunately, it's not. And for many, many families heading back to school over the last few weeks, it has meant a lot of anxiety too, because unfortunately our government has put our public education system on the back burner and continues to not prioritize our kids' futures. Teachers and education workers that are standing here with me today are doing what they can to support our children, but with fewer and fewer resources, and it's really heartbreaking to see. Students and education workers going back to overcrowded classrooms, families feeling the pressure of cuts and neglect and underfunding that have left our schools so strained and our kids' futures at stake. We've also heard, of course, of many parents who are stuck paying out of pocket for education supports and mental health resources. And then, of course, increasingly, and we're seeing this all across the province, real struggles with transportation of students, buses that are not turning up at all, late buses. We know that there's a reason for that. And again, it all points to a government that continues to fail our children. We brought forward solutions over the last few years that would increase funding by $1,500 per child so our schools can be set up for success. But time and again, those practical solutions that we've brought forward that make life better for people, only Doug Ford and his politicians are standing in the way. Now, listen, I wanted to make a couple of points here because I think it's really important to know what we're doing here today is historic. Education workers, their unions, are standing up with the NDP. This endorsement by QP, by OSSTF, is historic in this area. And I really, really want to thank education workers for stepping forward in this by-election because they know more than anyone else how important it is that we put the supports back that children need. Some of these folks are going to speak a little bit more to some of the cuts and what it's meant for our schools and particularly for the communities here. So I'll leave that to them. But what I want to say to the people of Bay of Quinte is, with your support and your energy, we can come together and we can add Amanda to the only team at Queen's Park that's actually fighting to make sure that our kids get the very best education and resources and support that they deserve. Ontarians deserve better, and the NDP is going to deliver it. And step number one is electing Amanda Robertson here in Bay of Quinte. And I'm going to turn it over now to Amanda.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Mara, and thank you everybody for being here today. It is so amazing the support that I've received from our education partners and from families and community members since announcing my candidacy for the NDP and for running for the MPP. But the reality is, education is such a big reason for why I've stepped into this role and why I've decided to take this on, because our schools are hurting and our families are hurting. And from my vantage point on the school board, it became so evident that we do not have a reliable or a stable partner in the provincial government right now, and it is so hard for our educators. It's so hard for families to be trying to pick up those pieces and really hold together a system that is hanging on by a thread and that is just really fragile. So we've spoke with families who are struggling with transportation of their students with special needs, families who've had to take it upon themselves to get kids to and from school because the support and the reliable busing is just not there. We've had students who are not able to attend school on certain days because the EA is off sick, or they don't have a replacement, or they just don't have that classroom support. So we actually have students in our community who are struggling to just get to school and to be welcomed into school because we can't offer them the support that they need. And it's completely unacceptable for people living in the Bay of Quinte in 2024 to be struggling to get their kids to school every day and to have them well supported and safe in the schools. And we have fabulous educators that are working in the schools and stretching themselves thin and really going above and beyond to ensure that they're offering this world-class education that we know Ontario can and should have. But we really do need reliable partners in the provincial government, and right now we don't have that. So this by-election, we have an opportunity to really send a message to that government that what they're doing is not okay, and any of these little sprinkles of promises and policies and hopes that they're going to throw out from now until election day and maybe from now until the general election, we have an opportunity to send somebody who can join the team that's holding them to account so that we can at least be getting out of them the little bits that they've been throwing to us. And I think it's really unacceptable to have a government that shows up only at election time, only when they need something from us, and are not paying attention to the people who live in the Bay of Quinte on the daily basis. And we need representation. We need people who know the people with the boots on the ground, who hear their struggles, but also hear their solutions. Because the reality is our education workers, our administrators, our school board staff, we know what we need to improve things in schools. We just need a reliable partner to come to the table and support that and to fund that. So I'm really excited to be able to hold some feet to the fire with Marit at Queen's Park, and I would love the opportunity to represent the Bay of Quinte. I think we can do better and we deserve better, and we can absolutely have that come September 20th. So thank you all for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew?
Sure.
Andrew. I'll turn it over to Andrew. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Andrew. I'll hold this for you.
I'm Andrew Walker, the president of the local OSSTF Secondary School Teachers Federation, District 29. And I just want to highlight a couple of things of how this government's cuts have impacted us locally. So in the last 6 years of the Ford government, we've had an increase in secondary school enrollment in this area, but we've had a decrease of 18 teachers working in our schools. So that decrease of teachers in the schools has a huge impact on students' abilities to learn. So we have less caring adults in the schools, and students are struggling more. Other things that we've had is an increase in e-learning. So the government has mandated students have to take 2 credits of e-learning. They've changed the funding that comes to schools. So schools used to be funded at 22 students gave 1 teacher. Now it's 23 gives 1 teacher. But if it's an e-learning course, you need 30 students to get a teacher. So all of these things have had huge impacts on students' ability to learn because there's less adults in the room. Students are in bigger classrooms and they just have less opportunities. So these are things that we struggle with locally. And Amanda is working with the school board. She's a school board trustee. She's doing a great job there. The school board's doing a great job, but they're being asked to solve a problem without the resources to do so. So we need somebody in the provincial government who's going to advocate for resources for our students, advocate for resources for our schools, so they can get back to flourishing how they did before this Ford government.
Thank you very much. Liz, you want to say a few words? Yeah. Super, thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
So just to echo what Andrew said, we definitely need a government in place that is going to respect education and education workers, and the NDP will be there for us all the way. Province-wide, real per pupil funding, which means it's been adjusted to inflation and enrollment changes, has been cut every single year since 2011, 2012. Since then, it has cut over $1,300 per student. Just over the current PC government's term, 2018, 2019 to 2024, 25, the real pupil funding was cut by over $1,000. At the Algonquin and Lakeshore Catholic District School Board, where I am the president of the Education Workers in QP Local 1479, The real pupil cuts has been on an average of $789 per student. Had that funding kept up with inflation and enrollment growth, that would have been an estimated $9.29 million more that the school board could have had in their budgets. This money could have been used to hire over 140 more education workers. That would be your EAs, DCEs, custodians, school secretaries, and library workers, or more than 3 positions per school, including outdoor education centers and adult learning centers. Underfunding is leading to a staffing crisis across this province and across this school board. On a student staff basis, staffing ratios for more important positions at the Algonquin School Board were worse in the 2023 school year than they were in the 2018-2019 year when the PCs formed the government. Ratios are worse for the DECEs and the EA's school secretary positions and all school library technicians positions that were eliminated in 2022 when they chose to close all of the kindergarten to grade 8 libraries in the board. This government chose to underfund schools, and that means that students are needing to go without the supports and services that they need, not to mention overwork, stress, and violence that workers face due to understaffing. This government is no good for students, parents, or workers, and the Ford government is just picking up where the McGuinty-Wynne Liberals left off.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your comments. Thank you so much for giving us a bit of an insight into where things are at locally too and what education workers are facing. And thank you, Amanda, for stepping up and agreeing to run here and represent this community. I thought as Amanda made a really good point, which I want to reiterate, because at this very moment, Doug Ford is getting ready to make some kind of announcement, I think in Wellington today, here in Bay of Quinte riding. And I think folks are saying, gee, you know, it would be great if the government came through with what people here need, not just during by-elections, not just during election time. You know, it's a bit rich for him to show up here and make an announcement just to kind of frankly buy the votes of folks here. But people aren't falling for it. We're on the doorsteps every day here in Bay of Quinte. Amanda's been really working the doorsteps. And I feel there's a momentum happening here. There's a desire for change. People see through that. They know that Doug Ford and his Conservatives are never going to put them first. They're always going to be second. Regular people are always going to be second to Doug Ford and the Conservatives. And that includes our kids and our families and our education workers. And they deserve so much better than this. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the transportation piece is huge right now. So in Hastings and Prince Edward, we are underfunded by $2 million a year on our transportation budget. So that means we're pulling money out of classroom supports and other areas of education to just get kids to school. But also that's $2 million, and we've still had to make cuts with respect to ridership. We have, I know here at Centennial, it was very controversial last year because we have a lot of people that attend the Centennial Arts program here, a lot of students, and a lot of them have courtesy ridership on our school buses. And so we were having to try to make decisions about whether or not we offer that courtesy ridership, knowing that it's going to impact our arts programming, which is flourishing here. And it is one of our crown jewels of our board, and we were at risk of actually impacting if people could even access this programming based on transportation alone. So I know that transportation might not always seem like the glamorous, like hot button thing, but the reality is if we can't get kids into schools, then we can't teach them and we can't offer them the curriculum that they deserve. So I think that would be top of mind right now, where an NDP government would be supportive of making sure that school boards have what they need to get kids to school. And I think that's a big first step, and it's something that in our board would be so much appreciated, because it really is impacting our ability to offer quality education throughout the board, and to have that support staff on the ground and those teaching staff and education workers in the schools.
You mentioned transportation and bigger class sizes. You mentioned, is there sort of another sort of top 2 or 3 issues that you're hearing at the door?
Yeah, around our special education funding, we're underfunded for obviously special education as well. It's something that we've long advocated for increases because we can't offer the supports that some of our most vulnerable students need, and because they're integrated into our classrooms, it's impacting the learning of not only them but their classmates, and it's stretching our teachers and our education workers who are already stretched very thin to provide extra supports and resources for our students with special needs. And I think we can do better by those students and those families, but it's going to take money and it's going to take investment in those supports.
Okay, thank you.
Where does that money come from? How do you fund? How much do you need to put into the education?
Right. So I mean, the first thing I would add is that we know right now, and we've said this for many years, that the funding formula that exists in Ontario, and that, government after government said they were going to fix that funding formula, and they failed. They've refused to do so. We need to fix that. We need to stop funding based on the number of bums in seats, and actually fund based on need. And that is for me, that's the fundamental piece. We have to change the way that we fund education. I also believe we can spend in a smarter way, but at the end of the day, we are simply not investing in our schools and in the future of our children. We're going to pay for that down the road. Right? We're going to pay for that absolutely down the road if we don't invest properly. The government's going to come out here, and Doug Ford's always going to say, oh, we're spending more money than anybody's ever spent in the history of the universe, right? But nobody believes that. Nobody who's got kids in schools believes that because we see the impact of the cuts. We see it in how our kids can't get to school on time, or maybe the bus isn't coming at all, as Amanda said. We see it in the lack of educational assistance in our classrooms, because the support is simply not there for kids who are struggling, let alone for kids who just need a little bit of extra support. It's just not there for kids with special needs. We see it in the burnout and the exhaustion of their teachers and all of the education workers in our system, who are having a really rough time right now. We see it in the size of the classrooms. We know that more needs to be done, and it needs to happen fast. And let's not forget, a lot of our littlest ones, but all the kids, have struggled a lot in the last few years after COVID. And so we need now more than ever mental health supports, additional supports in our schools. These are all things that we in the NDP have put forward as proposals, as solutions to this government, and they vote it down every single time. So more needs to be done, and we're ready to step up and make it happen. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Think that a funding formula is based on looking at a few communities as sort of the example, and then everything else fits into that little box. And that's how government essentially decides where the money goes and how much money everybody gets. And it really is mostly based on the number of students as opposed to the needs. And we know that, some communities have different needs than other communities. Some kids have different needs than other kids. And the funding formula, the way that it was developed, originally back by the Harris Conservatives, and then, the Liberals just kept it going. Report after report shows that this is not working. It hasn't worked for a long time.
Actually, can I just add one thing to that?
Please.
So one
Standing there, yeah.
one local piece in terms of education funding and challenges that we have locally here are, so we have a lot of smaller communities with high schools in. So I'm thinking of like Bancroft or Picton, actually even in Trenton and Center Hastings in Madoc. And so these smaller schools have significant challenges in terms of trying to offer students the selection of courses that they are interested in taking. And so as the government increases class sizes, it becomes harder and harder for smaller schools to offer a wide range of programs. So what's happening is students are being forced into e-learning to get those varieties of programs that they want to take. But we learned during COVID that e-learning is not the best way for the majority of students in this province to learn. So the fact that the Ford government is forcing students into e-learning to get programs that they need is not supporting students, and it's not recognizing what we learned during COVID. So we need to learn what we learned, the lessons from COVID, recognize what the impact that had on students, and say that's not the way to force students to learn in our province. And we need to support smaller schools, and we need to support in-class learning.
Thank you so much. Yes.
So I have one
Oh,
more
please.
thing. I do have one more thing to add as well. So with the school boards across Ontario, we aren't funded for teacher absentee pay. So anytime a teacher or education worker is out of the school, they're paid if they're on sick leave, but we don't get funded to replace them in the schools. So school boards are spending like exponential, I don't have the dollar figure on my right off the top of my head, but we are spending millions of dollars a year to cover these costs of replacement teachers, replacement education workers. And that's something that I know we've pleaded with the government to help address that cost. And a big piece of that is addressing the environment in the school, because we have lots of education workers who have to go off on leave, or their job becomes so untenable that they're off, and we have to replace them. And I think if we can make the environment that people are working in more respectful, more well-funded, where they can feel like they're supported and they're not burning out, then that's going to be a cost savings to school boards in the millions of dollars a year, just by being able to support and give the resources we need to give for our education workers and for our teachers who are doing such great and fabulous work. But that's just one piece where education is becoming so much more expensive because we're having to pay for the outcomes of this lack of resource and the outcomes of this toxic environment that has been created by this government. So we're spending these dollars anyways. We're spending them whether the government is allocating them or not. So I think that's a big piece where there are little ways that we are spending a lot of money, and education is costing so much more than it needs to. But we do need more dollars where it's going to actually have the impact.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much. I will just end by saying, what a difference would it make, in Ontario for our kids' futures if government treated education workers as true partners. And we don't have a government that respects education workers, that respects school boards, that respects families at the end of the day, who are the ones who have to bear a lot of the additional cost and brunt of their decisions. So thank you very much.